All right, so today on the deep dive, we're going to be talking about escape.
Ooh, escape.
Yeah. Um, I thought it'd be interesting because, well, we've got this autobiography here, Papillon, this guy, Henri Charrière.
Okay.
His nickname was Papillon, and he wrote about all his crazy escapes from these French penal colonies.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really
So
intense.
like prison breaks.
Yeah, prison breaks, but like way more intense than you're probably imagining.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
And we've also got this newspaper article that's completely different, actually, but it's about authors who just disappeared.
Disappeared,
Yeah.
like vanished from public life.
Exactly. Like they were super famous and then poof, gone.
Interesting. I wonder if there's like a connection between those two types of escape.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like, what is it about, the need to break free? Is it physical freedom we're all after? Or is it like wanting to control our own stories or maybe something else completely?
I think there's definitely something deeper there, like a fundamental human need for autonomy, you know?
Right. Okay, so let's start with Papillon. This guy gets wrongfully convicted of murder and ends up in the French Guiana penal colonies. They call them bank.
The bank. Yeah, I've heard of those. They were notoriously brutal.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The book really doesn't hold back on the details. Like, disease was rampant, there was constant violence,
I bet. What kind of diseases are we talking about?
leprosy, yellow fever, dysentery, you name it.
Oh, wow.
And then you've got the threat of just like being assassinated by other prisoners or guards.
It sounds like surviving was an achievement in itself.
Oh, absolutely. The mortality rate was something like 80%.
Jeez. And yet Papillon not only survives, but he actually manages to escape multiple times.
Multiple times, yeah. And his first escape is, well, you've got to hear this, he uses lice.
Lice, what, like as weapons?
Not exactly. Haha. It's more strategic. So lice were everywhere in the prison, right?
Makes sense.
But the steam room was the only place to actually get rid of them.
Okay, I'm starting to see where this is going.
So Papillon intentionally infests himself with lice.
What? On purpose?
Yeah, to get access to the steam room. And then from there, he can start plotting his escape.
That's wild. Talk about resourceful.
Right. And it gets even more interesting. So he's got this fellow convict, Degas,
Okay.
and Degas is a tattoo artist. And they come up with this plan to create a money belt.
A money belt.
Yeah. But get this, they hide it under Papillon's skin.
Whoa! They actually implanted it.
Yeah. Like, think about the level of trust involved there, not to mention the pain.
I can't even imagine.
Right.
Yeah.
So he's got the money, he's in the steam room, but he's still smack dab in the middle of a heavily guarded penal colony.
Yeah. How does he actually get out of there?
This is where it gets crazy. He'd been working on this elaborate plan for months, connecting with other convicts, stockpiling supplies.
So he had a network, like inside and outside the prison.
Exactly. And they had figured out a route through the Guineas jungle, even arranged for a boat.
Wow, he was thinking several steps ahead.
Oh, yeah. But even with all that planning, the jungle itself is incredibly dangerous.
Yeah, I can only imagine. What kind of dangers are we talking about?
I mean, wild animals, disease, starvation, it's like a whole other level of survival.
Right.
There's this one part in the book where he's describing this alligator attack.
An alligator attack.
Yeah, he's hiding in this creek, and all of a sudden there's this huge fight between an alligator and these wild pigs.
Oh, gosh.
He says the alligator was just flinging pigs into the air with its tail like it was nothing.
That's intense.
A crazy image, right?
Yeah.
But it really shows you what he was up against. It wasn't just about escaping the guards. It was about surviving the jungle itself.
It's like escaping one prison just to enter another one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that determination to survive, to claw his way back to some kind of freedom, it's pretty remarkable.
It is. And it kind of makes me think about those authors we were talking about earlier, the ones who disappeared.
Really? How so?
Well, they were also fighting for a kind of freedom, right? Even if it wasn't physical, they wanted to control their own narrative, their own creative space.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Like, they were both trying to find a way to exist on their own terms.
Exactly. So Papillon, he eventually makes it to Trinidad. But even though he's technically free from the ban, things aren't exactly easy for him.
Oh. What happens in Trinidad?
Well, legally, he's in a really precarious situation. He can't really live openly.
So even though he's escaped, he's still trapped in a system that's limiting his choices.
Exactly. It's like trading one prison for another, just a less visible one.
And that really makes you think about what freedom really means, right?
Absolutely. Is it just about the absence of physical barriers? Or is there something more to it, like a deeper sense of autonomy? And that's something those authors were grappling with too, I think.
That's a great point.
Mhm.
But, Papillon's time in Trinidad isn't all bad. There's this family, the Bowens, who help him out.
Oh, yeah, the Bowens. They're such a bright spot in this whole story.
Right. They give him food, shelter, and most importantly, they treat him with respect.
Something he hadn't experienced in a long time, I'm sure.
Exactly. And there's this funny little anecdote where a British warship gives him like an official salute, and he's totally baffled by it.
He's probably never been saluted in his life, let alone by a warship.
Right. But it obviously means a lot to him. It's like this unexpected act of kindness that reminds him that there's still good in the world.
Ah, that's sweet. It's like, after all the brutality he's been through, it's a little glimmer of hope.
It really is. And I wonder if, this experience with the Bowens, if it kind of planted the seed for his later connection with the indigenous tribe.
You mean, like, his willingness to trust people again?
Yeah, maybe it's like even though he's been betrayed and mistreated, he's still open to human connection.
That's a good point. But unfortunately, his time with the Bowens gets cut short when he tries to help 3 other escaped convicts get to Colombia.
Oh, right, the rescue mission. What happens there?
Well, it goes about as badly as you can imagine. The whole thing falls apart. They get captured and thrown into a Colombian jail.
Oh, no. After all that.
It's a huge setback, right? It shows you that even when you escape, the threat of imprisonment is always looming.
It's like this constant cycle that's back and forth between freedom and confinement.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. But even when he's thrown back in prison, Papillon's spirit doesn't break. He actually escapes again.
He does, from a Colombian jail.
Yep. But this time, it's different. Like, he describes the prison as this place of utter despair.
Oh, wow.
He even sees another prisoner forced to eat his own excrement.
That's horrific.
It is. But even in that darkness, there's this moment of, like, unexpected solidarity.
What do you mean?
The other prisoners, they recognize Papillon's spirit, and they offer him cigarettes and messages of support.
Oh, wow. That's pretty amazing considering the circumstances.
It is. It's like, even in the most awful situations, humans can still find ways to connect and support each other.
Yeah, that's really powerful. Okay, so he escapes this Colombian prison, and then what?
Well, this is where things take a really unexpected turn. He washes ashore on the Guajira Peninsula and ends up being taken in by an indigenous tribe.
An indigenous tribe. Wow, that's quite the shift from solitary confinement.
Right. It's like he's gone from one extreme to the other. And that's where we'll pick up next time. We'll explore how he navigates this new world and what it means for his idea of freedom.
Okay, I'm definitely hooked. Can't wait to dive into that next time. But before we go, I think it's time we transition to those authors who chose to vanish. What can their unique form of escape teach us?
Well, that's a whole other layer to this idea of escape, right? It's not about physical barriers, but about, like, withdrawing from the public eye, protecting your inner world. And it's surprisingly relevant to all of us, even if we're not famous authors.
That's definitely something to think about. All right, well, we'll be back next time to delve into the world of literary escape. See you then.
Okay, so last time on the deep dive, we left off with Papillon washing ashore on the Guajira Peninsula. Kind of crazy, right? Ending up with this indigenous tribe after all that. It is pretty wild. And what's even more surprising? He actually thrives there.
He does. Like, he actually fits in with his tribe.
Yeah, he really does. He learns their customs, hangs out with them, participates in their daily life. He even forms some pretty close bonds with them, especially with the chief, Lolly, and this woman named Zoraima.
So he finally found a place where he can, like, let his guard down. After all that time in prison, it must have felt amazing.
I'm sure it did, but it's not all sunshine and roses. This is Papillon we're talking about.
Yeah.
He's still carrying all that baggage from his past, all the years he lost in prison.
Right, the injustice of it all.
Exactly, and he still wants revenge. He wants to right those wrongs that were done to him.
So even though he's found this, like, peaceful existence with the tribe, a part of him is still restless.
Definitely. He's torn, between the tranquility he's found with the Guajira and this pull of his past, this need to reclaim his own narrative. It's like those authors we were talking about, the ones who disappeared.
Oh, yeah, I see the connection. They were all trying to, like, find their own space, define their own stories, even if it meant leaving everything behind.
Exactly. It's about control, right? Having agency in your own life. And for Papillon, that meant eventually leaving the tribe, even though he found peace there.
I bet that was tough, especially with Lolly and Zoraima. They clearly cared about him.
Oh, they did. And that's what makes this part of the story so heartbreaking, He has to figure out a way to leave without betraying their love and trust, to make them understand why he has to go.
It's like an impossible conversation.
It pretty much was. Luckily, he had this friend, Rio. He was like a go-between, a trusted intermediary for the tribe and the outside world.
Okay, so Zuriel kind of understands both sides of the situation.
Yeah, exactly. And he knows Papillon has to follow this path, even if it hurts to see him go.
Yeah.
He helps him figure out how to approach the whole thing.
So how does Papillon even begin to explain all this to Lolly and Zoraima?
Well, instead of just saying, hey, I'm out of here, he appeals to their sense of justice. Like he asks them, what would you do if your father was sick? Or what if you had a chance to avenge a wrong done to your family?
So he's framing his desire for revenge as, like, a noble quest.
Yeah, something they can understand and even support. He's speaking their language, so to speak, and it actually works. By aligning his need for freedom with their values, he gets them to see his side of things.
Wow, that's actually pretty brilliant.
It is. It shows how much he's learned about their culture, how much he respects them. But then there's another wrinkle in all this. Zoraima might be pregnant.
Wait, what?
Yeah, it turns out she and Papillon slept together a few months back. And Lolly, well, he's worried she might be carrying Papillon's child.
Oh, wow, that definitely complicates things.
It does. But Papillon, he steps up, he makes a promise to them, he tells them he'll come back once he's settled things in the outside world. He says he'll be back before they're old and ugly.
Haha. Okay, that's kind of sweet, but also, like, a huge promise.
It is. But it shows how much he cares for them, even though he knows he has to leave. He's trying to offer them some kind of reassurance, you know?
Yeah, I get it. So the tribe, they eventually agree to let him go.
They do, but they do it their way, you know? With dignity and respect. They help him plan his departure, make sure he leaves on good terms. They even appoint a new guardian for Lolly and Zoraima while he's gone.
It's like they're trying to protect their own, even though it's painful to see him go.
Exactly. It really highlights the depth of their bond, despite all the cultural differences and the heartache of separation. And there's this one detail that always gets me. They make Papillon promise that their house will always be his, and that no man will ever enter it except his son, if Zoraima has a boy.
Oh, that's beautiful. It's like a way of keeping their connection alive, ensuring a part of him remains with them.
Right. It's a powerful symbol of their enduring bond. And then, Lolly, he insists that Papillon leaves in broad daylight, you know, in front of everyone, according to their customs. It's like this final act of respect.
Wow, that's a really striking image. It's
Yeah.
like they're sending him off with their blessing.
Exactly. And so Papillon sets off again, leaving behind this life he could have never imagined. He's heading back into a world full of uncertainty, but this time he carries the love and support of the Guajira tribe with him.
It's a pretty amazing ending to that chapter of his life.
It is. It shows that even after all the hardship and brutality, he's still capable of finding connection, of experiencing genuine love and acceptance. And it kind of makes you wonder, you know, what would have happened if he stayed? Would he have truly been happy?
That is a good question. It makes you think about the different paths we choose in life and what ultimately brings us happiness.
Right. And it's interesting to compare that to the choices those authors made. They were seeking a different kind of freedom, a retreat from the public eye, a way to protect their inner world. And, you know, in a way, it's a choice we all face at some point, even if we're not famous authors. It's about figuring out how to balance our need for connection with our desire for solitude, how to protect our own space while still engaging with the world.
Yeah, that's a great point. Okay, so let's shift gears now and dive into the world of literary escape. What can we learn from those authors who chose to vanish at the height of their success?
Well, their stories offer a fascinating glimpse into the pressures of fame and the allure of anonymity. And maybe, just maybe, they hold some valuable lessons for all of us about how to navigate the complexities of modern life.
Sounds intriguing. All right, let's explore those literary escapes next. So, we've talked about Papillon, his daring escapes, his time with the Guajira tribe. Pretty intense stuff, right?
Definitely. It really makes you think about the lengths people go to for freedom, for a chance to live on their own terms.
Absolutely. And now we're diving into, well, a different kind of escape. These authors who chose to vanish from the public eye.
Yeah, it's a fascinating contrast, isn't it? Papillon fighting for his life, literally breaking free from prison walls.
Right, his struggle is so tangible, so visceral. But what about these authors? What were they running from?
I think for them it was more about escaping the gilded cage of fame. Think about it. You're a successful author, everyone knows your name, everyone wants a piece of you.
Right, there's that constant pressure to produce, to live up to expectations.
Exactly. And the critics, the fans, They can be relentless. It's like you lose control of your own narrative.
And your privacy too, right?
Oh, absolutely. So, for some authors, disappearing becomes a way to reclaim their creative freedom, to protect their inner world from all that external noise.
Yeah, it's like saying, my art is mine, and I'm not going to let the demands of the market dictate my creative
Ugh.
process.
Like J.D. Salinger after Catcher in the Rye, he basically became a hermit.
He just retreated from the world, said, I'm done.
Exactly. And Harper Lee, she wrote To Kill a Mockingbird, this masterpiece, and then basically went silent for decades.
It's a powerful statement, right? Like, I'm not defined by my success. I'm not a commodity.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What's the cost of fame? Is it worth sacrificing your privacy, your creative freedom?
Some artists, maybe they just reach a point where the spotlight is too much.
Yeah, maybe they need that solitude to create, to connect with their inner voice. And then you have someone like B. Traven.
The Treasure of the Sierra Madre guy.
Right, he was so secretive no one even knew his real name.
He took anonymity to a whole other level.
It's like he was saying, the work speaks for itself. My personal life is irrelevant.
But isn't that kind of countercultural, especially nowadays? With social media, personal branding, everyone's supposed to be out there.
It is interesting, right? Maybe these authors, they were ahead of their time. They recognized the value of privacy, of staying true to yourself in a world that's constantly trying to put you in a box.
So we have Papillon, breaking free from actual prisons, and these authors escaping the pressures of fame, the expectations, the loss of control.
Two very different types of escape, but maybe they're not so different after all.
Right. What's the underlying theme here? What can we, the average folks, take away from these stories?
It's about autonomy, isn't it? That deep-seated human need to have agency in your own life, to make your own choices, shape your own destiny.
Whether it's escaping a physical prison or the gilded cage of fame, it's about finding that space where you can be yourself on your own terms.
Exactly. Most of us won't face Papillon's challenges or have to deal with the pressures of literary stardom.
Right, but we all have our own constraints, those things that make us feel trapped, limited.
It could be a job you hate, a relationship that's draining, societal pressures that feel suffocating.
So how do we find that autonomy, that freedom within those constraints?
I think it starts with recognizing those limitations, those things that are holding you back.
And then figuring out how to push back, even in small ways.
Right. Setting boundaries, pursuing your passions, saying no to things that don't serve you.
It's like those small acts of rebellion, those moments where you choose yourself.
It's not about running away from the world. It's about running towards a life that feels more authentic, more aligned with who you are.
Just like Papillon and those authors, they were all seeking a truer version of themselves.
Exactly. Escape, it's not about physical distance. It's about an internal journey.
It's about self-discovery, about having the courage to live a life that feels right for you.
Beautifully put. And that, I think, is the ultimate message here. We all have the power to shape our own stories, to find freedom within the constraints of our lives.
So, to our listeners, we ask you this. What are you escaping from? And, more importantly, what are you escaping towards? Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.